Hi everyone, Lucy here today. I haven't been on for a little while and kind of felt like I wanted to try again. I wanted to talk about something that has come up a couple of times um, and is a really, I think, interesting thing to talk about, but something that we are quite passionate about. I really hope everybody had a lovely Christmas. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you're enjoying like a festive season. I hope you're having a lovely time. And yeah, I just hope everybody's been having a really nice Christmas time. So the topic I wanted to talk about, I never know how to start videos, but the topic that I wanted to talk about was what is the purpose of getting a diagnosis? So why get one? And it's something that we've been asked by, I think, a couple of people. And I think it's something that you almost have to ask yourself when you are seeking a diagnosis. And I think it's something that you need to talk to the diagnoser about, what it means to you, why you want to get it. And I think that there are sort of arguments for and against. And it also differs depending on the, thing that you want to get diagnosed for. I'm talking mostly mental health today. And I can only speak from our experiences and our experience of dissociative identity disorder, anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, that is, depression, and potentially Em thinks she could have ADHD, but we don't know. We're not self-diagnosing. It's something that we are thinking about looking into. So let's start with the obvious DID. I'm fairly sure we've spoken about this before, but this is sort of like its own topic. So the reason we wanted to get diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, or we wanted to get a diagnosis that would recognise why we experience multiple personalities, is because if you don't have that, one, nobody really believes you. If you say to somebody, I have multiple people living in my head, but I don't have a diagnosis and I don't know what to call it, it's a lot harder for people to understand and trust you in a way. Also, we have a new mic stand, so that's what this is. It's my mic. Maybe it'll sound better for you guys. We'll see. So yes, the other reason that we wanted to get diagnosed is for our own sake, that you're in your head a lot and you will argue with yourself a lot and say, that people aren't real. So what I mean by that is if you have DID, but it's undiagnosed, Emily constantly said to herself that we weren't real, that we were just her trying to get attention, and things like that. And so that causes her to be very unhappy and cross with herself, and it becomes very internal and it becomes an argument, and that's never good to have long term. The other thing with getting diagnosed with DID is that when people do understand a little bit better, it's a lot easier to talk to people and for people to accept and befriend your alters. I got a Christmas present from one of my friends and I was not expecting it. And it means a great deal to us to be seen, and basically to be seen, and to have that diagnosis means that somebody has seen you as what you are, and from an alter's point of view, it's a lot better than it was before. So that's our DID sort of experience. I believe we've gone into more detail in the past. But in terms of our anxiety, we've had this diagnosis for a very long time now. We got our generalized anxiety disorder diagnosis at a similar time to our depression diagnosis. And those diagnoses help because, one, we could have medication, so we were on antidepressants for quite a long time. That did help a certain amount. You can get therapy then, you can start to address, these dark thoughts, you can start to challenge a lot of it, and with the anxiety you can challenge that. Basically, gives you a way of understanding your brain and, again, validating those thoughts and feelings, so that you can tackle them a bit better. It's easier, again, to communicate to other people. If you have anxiety and you're having an anxious moment, that then you can say, I have anxiety, and they'll understand that a bit better. Also, unfortunately, we believe it's been the biggest reason that we have not had a job for a while, and generalized anxiety. So if, for other people in different situations, if you have a diagnosis, it means you're able to get support or benefits if you're struggling. That's another thing. So that very briefly touches on the diagnosis that we already have. Now, for things like ADHD and other diagnoses, why search for a diagnosis? So, for example, we'll talk about ADHD, but again, I'm not saying that we know that we have it. We don't. It's something we're looking into, and we are considering a possibility. So, let's explain. The reason that we think getting a diagnosis would help is because, again, ease of communication. So if we do find out we have ADHD, we can explain easier to people why we struggle with certain things, why things are difficult. It helps you understand why you struggle with certain things. And this is general as well. It's not just specific to ADHD, but if you struggle with something and you don't know why, and then you get a diagnosis, it will explain to you why you've struggled with those things, and also help you to understand how your mind works in a better way, why you think the way that you do, why you go through certain thought processes, and it helps you understand. And when you understand a bit better, it leads on to my other point, which is that if you have a diagnosis, you can start to work on yourself, whether that be through therapy or medication, or through this better understanding. If you know more, you can help yourself more, whether that be through communities and talking to other people and what they find helps. Because if you have a diagnosis, you can find those communities, and it's a lot easier to communicate in those communities without saying, I don't have this disorder, but I think I do. You can say, I have this thing. So you can get support groups, so you can get advice. You could speak to a doctor and get medication. You could speak to a therapist and get support. And basically learn how to challenge and tackle and help yourself, really, to grow and to become able to deal with the problems that you've been having. I think that's the biggest reason, is so if you do have a diagnosis, you can find ways to help. Now the counter argument to that is, if you think you have something, say for example ADHD, could you not just act sort of as if you do have it and try and help yourself with these support groups, or try and help yourself by learning, as much as you can about the therapy yourself? And that certainly is a possibility, especially when you're unable to get a diagnosis. For example, in this country, it takes years to get a diagnosis for ADHD and other disorders, it takes a very, very long time. The mental health care in this country is not the best. It's not as good as it could be. I mean, I will never put down the NHS. The NHS is incredible and we need to be very grateful for it. But it is lacking in certain areas because it is. And the mental health field is lacking. So you either have to wait for a very long time, or if you go private, it costs a lot of money. So while you don't have a diagnosis, absolutely trying to help yourself and trying to learn about your disorder is the only thing you can do. But I still feel like it will often be challenging to tackle those behaviours and thoughts and feelings that you might get, because your brain might argue with you that you actually have that disorder. Unless you have it written down or told to you by a specialist, your brain may well keep telling you that you don't have the disorder. And that can very easily spiral into depression and self-hating and calling yourself lazy and saying that, you know, I don't have this disorder, I'm just X bad trait. And that to me is really sad and I don't think it's particularly great. And the other thing, like I've already said about, sorry this is a bit rambly, is the communication side of things. If you don't have a diagnosis and you're talking to people you care about, people you want to understand you, the public if you're struggling with something, or your family, and you don't have a diagnosis but you're struggling with something, and you say to them, I think I might have this disorder, and I'm really struggling to be able to do this thing. A lot of people, especially strangers, may well not believe you or trust you, or so you might think anyway. People are less likely to trust somebody who self-diagnoses because obviously it's very easy to look online and become a hypochondriac and think that you have everything. And it seems to be a lot more discussed these days and a lot more talked about, which is brilliant, mental health. So a lot more people are being diagnosed or talking about anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. The only issue with that, which it's not, is that people start believing that it's becoming more popular or trendy to have mental health struggles. So approaching somebody and saying, I think I might have ADHD, or I think I might have X disorder and I'm struggling, some people can look at that and judge you, and then you won't get the support you need. So it's a communication tool, as well as all these other things, as being able to get medication, get care, get therapy, get understanding, get a community. So personally, we really do believe that it is definitely worth getting a diagnosis or seeking a diagnosis if you believe you have something. If you believe you have something or something similar, so for example, when we wanted to speak to a dissociation specialist because we knew that we all existed, but we didn't know what we were. We didn't know we had DID. We didn't know what exactly it was, but we wanted to speak to somebody, go through that process so that they could point us in the right direction or give us some idea of what best to do. And I think that's also important. So we think we might have ADHD, and seeking a diagnosis, even if that comes back as that's not what you have, that gives you an indication that it's not ADHD. So why do we feel these ways, and why do we, struggle in these certain areas? And then you can potentially be pointed in the right direction by the person that's diagnosing you, or seek other therapy or speak to more professionals. So I don't think there's anything wrong with seeking a diagnosis, even if you don't end up having the thing. It's always better to try and get a good understanding of your brain to help yourself if you're struggling. Because if you're struggling with something and you seek a diagnosis and it's not that, then you're still struggling. So there's still something going on there, you know? I hope that this has kind of made sense, and I hope it sort of answers a question, why get diagnosed? I don't mean any judgment by any of this, and yeah, it's kind of something that means a lot to us. And if anybody has any other reasons why you would get diagnosed, maybe I'm missing a blaringly obvious reason, please comment. Any questions at all, please comment as well. So thank you very much for watching. I really hope that you've had a lovely festive time, and yeah, it's been nice to come back and speak on here as Lucy. It's always nice to be out and talking to people as yourself when everybody sees somebody else. I don't want to get more confusing, but basically it's nice to be me. So yeah, I hope that everyone's doing well. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we will hopefully see you next Tuesday. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. Bye bye.